Welcome back, friends. It's D-Dub, and today we're talking about the Nintendo Switch Lite. So it's not the Nintendo Switch Mini, it's the Nintendo Switch Lite. I'm sure you've all seen the commercial, you've all seen the videos. There's, what, a couple thousand that have gone out today. I watched like 2 or 3, and I saw the trailer, and that was like the first thing that I saw when I woke up, because I woke up kind of late. So that was kind of just strange, waking up and kind of staggering out of bed and pulling out my phone and being like, oh, Switch Lite. That's pretty cool. And I showed my kid the trailer. I showed my girl the trailer. So I think I'm going to get one for my kid for his birthday. Even though after that we aren't going to see him. So I don't know. We might get him one. I might get one and then still kind of own both of them, but let him play it. 'Cause I want the Switch Lite for whatever reason. I do play quite a bit portably ever since starting this YouTube channel, where I have my dock up here. I could always just move the dock, but sometimes it's just easier to just play portably, especially if it's not something that has like a lot of like HUD stuff on the screen, which that's one of my worries about the Switch Lite, is that the screen's so small. There are some games, some third-party games like ports and stuff like that, where some of the stuff that's on the screen, it's already pretty small or hard to see. Like something like maybe like even Xenoblade Chronicles 2, like some of the menus, some of the writing, some of the text, it's kind of hard to see exactly what's going on. And my eyes aren't the greatest. I could probably use glasses, but for kids I guess it'll be fine. But taking an inch off of the screen, you know, and shrinking the screen even more, that's going to be a problem for some games, not many. But so anyways, I'm sure you've all seen this. What do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned for more news, more reviews, more looks at different products and things like that, more streams. I got a couple other videos coming up that are pretty cool. So, you know, thank you guys and everyone who's supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. And also, there's a giveaway, so look in the comments below. Go follow me on Twitter. I'm giving a Nintendo Switch Pokemon Pikachu skin, so go follow me on Twitter. Go to the Gleam link. You'll see it's right at the top. So yeah, the commercial was really good. I was actually really impressed with the quality of camera and like lenses and stuff that they're using when they show all the kids skateboarding and riding their bikes to like the pier and the ocean and the skate park and stuff. I was very impressed just watching it on my phone, how rich and colorful everything was. Like it really like stood out more than any of their other ads, and it really stood out versus a lot of different ads. So I don't know what kind of camera they use, but something about it just seemed to have been tweaked. The color and the lens and just the camera that they used, it was really good. And then of course we went into outer space and we saw the guy in the space station. That just made me laugh, because I don't know if a Switch has ever been brought out to a space station, so it'd be cool to see one floating around, to actually touch it and have it just spin off and bouncing off the walls and stuff. But that was pretty cool. So my main thoughts on this are that, of course, we knew it was coming. I've seen a couple videos and people are kind of like, you know, I told you so. Like, we all knew it was coming. It's like there's rumors, there's leaks, Wall Street Journal, all these pictures. We all knew it was coming. So to sit there and say, you know, I knew and you didn't, you were a spectacle, that's just funny in my opinion. But so this thing's pretty cool. It's smaller. It's got the D-pad. The joysticks look pretty much the same. They look maybe just a little bit different. Like you couldn't really get a great grasp on them, but the actual stick part itself, where you put your thumb on, that almost looked a little bit thicker. It seems to still have the small travel. So I don't know if it's the same exact stick. We're gonna have to get it and take the thing apart. And my main concern is that if they have some kind of new joystick, which the depth of the Switch almost doesn't allow for like the type of, I don't know for you guys out there if you've ever actually taken apart like an old controller, and not even an old controller, but pretty much the Switch has a new type of joystick that was never used in anything else. I've never seen it in a PS4 or an Xbox One. They're still using, like if you've ever seen this controller, you take it apart, there's a stick, it goes in and it has 2 different axes that turn these kind of little gears, and that basically tells where the position is from 0. So that's why when those get worn out, if your stick is kind of over here and it should be more centered, you'll get that drift. Or if you've ever actually turned a console on and you've had or even now with the Switch, if you turn your controller on and pair it with the Switch and you hold the stick slightly off center, by the time it actually pairs and turns it on, that's the 0 point. So then when you let go and it goes back to the center, your character, your cursor, whatever, it's drifting. So anyways, I don't think that the depth of the thing is going to allow for one of these old school types of sticks, which hold up incredibly well, from the PS2 to not really the 64. That kind of, I've taken it apart and it has these plastic joints instead of metal, but pretty much any old Xbox controller, any old Xbox 360 controller, you take it apart and it pretty much has the same concept, whether it's from China or made in America or whatever. And the thumbsticks, they hold up very well on pretty much every controller, from the Dreamcast to whatever, pretty much everything. But for the most part, all the sticks from any controller in the past 15 years use these boxes that house the metal pieces, and the Switch doesn't do that. They're these tiny paper thin contact sheets that are made out of metal, and then the stick is still connected to two, like an X and Y coordinate. So when you move the stick, it's actually moving them and telling where the cursor is, but they're like these contact pads, and the slightest little bit of dust can get in there and just kind of throw it off. Like, they get dirty. I've actually taken a couple apart, and that was the source of my drifting issue. I had to take my old Joy-Con apart, and I was able to get the stick out, and then it's enclosed in this whole little box thing, and you have to pop it open, and then you have to be careful taking it apart that it doesn't fall all apart. It's a little bit tricky if you've never done it, and it wasn't really too hard, but the contact pads, they were dirty. I had to take like a Q-tip, brush them off, get everything out of the actual little housing, because it's made out of like metal with like a plastic bottom to it. Brush everything out of there, and it doesn't take long, but it's insane just the amount of little dust that will throw off the thumbstick. So I don't think in the new one that they're going to be able to do anything different, and I think once we actually get it and see it and people have taken it apart, I think it's going to be the same joysticks that are in the Joy-Con, just put in and hardwired to the system, because the Joy-Con aren't detachable. And if that's the case, that's going to be a problem, because I only had my my Joy-Con for about 2 months, and they started drifting, and I kind of blew on it. I kind of like went really hard spinning the stick around, and it went away for a little bit, and then after a couple weeks I kept noticing it with Breath of the Wild, and it just wouldn't go away. And then finally, that was when I took it apart, saw there was dust in there, and even though underneath the thumbstick here, there's this little sheet, or sheath, I guess you would say. It's like a little skirt that kind of holds under there. The actual hole for the thumbstick, it needs to be big enough to spin that whole thing around. So the hole is pretty big. You can get cat hair. I have dogs. There was like little pieces of dog fur. Like, it's insane what we'll get into electronics, even if they've never been on the ground. You've never taken your Joy-Con off and actually pet your dogs with it. Aw, good boy. Good dog. You like that. You like the Joy-Cons. You love the Joy-Con. And it just kind of ruins your Joy-Con, and there's people out there that don't even know how to go about fixing it. They think that their Joy-Con is just kind of screwed. They go out and they go to GameStop and they spend another $35 on a single Joy-Con, or they go to Walmart or Target and they spend $70, $80 on a new pair. And then when you see all these videos coming out saying how to repair it, you go through YouTube, there's hundreds and hundreds of different solutions, people doing different things, and you see all these people saying that, oh man, I wish I had known this. Like, I threw mine away. I thought they were trash. I trashed them. I threw them out. There's so many Joy-Con that are floating around in the ocean. Like I stated yesterday, there's so many Joy-Con floating around the ocean that were fine. You really could have just went on eBay and got like a $2 or $3 thumbstick replacement. And as long as you have the tri-wing, and as long as you had the tri-wing screwdriver, you could get into it and take it apart and put it in. So I think that's going to be the biggest problem with this Switch Lite, is that kids are going to get it, and if they don't use a different joystick, then they're pretty much screwed, because there's going to be like a lot of kids that end up having this drift issue, especially because even though this thing is really marketed in the marketing towards adults, it's kind of easy to see that they just do that for marketing purpose. What's cool is cool. And what's cool is basically what kids attach themselves to. So it's kind of like the little brother, big brother syndrome, where even though they're showing this to an adult anybody that's playing a Switch, a little kid is going to come by. You could go sit at a park, you could sit at a lake, you could go anywhere where there's kids, pull out your Switch and just stand there and start playing. And the kid would be curious as to what it is, even if they've never seen one before, and they would come over and be like, oh, what is that? What does that do? Like, can I play? Can I try? So even though they don't show it for kids, kids are going to end up with this, and it's going to go into backpacks or pockets. It's going to get thrown around a bit. It's going to get abused probably a little bit more than the regular Switch, not that those don't get abused anyway, and people think it's more fragile than it is. So I give Nintendo credit for that, but then when it comes to something like the joystick, just a little bit of dust kind of ruins the electronics inside in terms of the thumbstick, and so at that point you pretty much need to go a different route. So I don't know if they're going to do that. It seems to be both shorter, thinner, and less depth. So with all that being said, I still think the thing it's pretty cool. It's cool that it's smaller. I thought that they could have made it smaller but still kept the screen the same size. I like the colors. The colors are nice. It seems like there'll be a little bit of a problem, and there's kind of already the problem going around, because in the commercial he specifically said that there's no HD rumble, but he didn't say there was no rumble. And there is no rumble in this thing at all. There's no HD rumble. There's no regular rumble. But it seems like people got that twisted in just the first day of its announcement. And people are like, no, they said no HD rumble, not necessarily no rumble. And that's a thing that people are kind of running crazy with, as well as there's no IR camera. And I've seen comments and stuff in some places where people said that the IR is the motion controls. And so in this commercial, they didn't specifically say that there's no motion controls, but that seems to be the case, that there actually is motion controls, no IR camera. There is NFC, but no HD rumble. So you could still use Amiibo. You pretty much can't play 1-2 Switch. But in the commercial also, he said you would have to in order to play 1-2 Switch or some of these other games, look at the back of the box and see if it says handheld mode. So 1-2 Switch says that it does not support handheld mode. So that right off the bat is going to kind of throw people off. Like if they're actually looking at it, they're going to be like, I don't know if this game is actually going to work. Or you have to go and look at a YouTube video or something before you actually buy it. But if a mom's in a store with a kid and they're buying it on the fly, if you're at Walmart, Target, GameStop, whatever, sometimes you just don't get the information that you need if you're asking questions. And sometimes you just buy things on a whim that aren't what they turn out to be. And this has kind of always been the problem, I guess, with Nintendo consoles. You don't hear like so much about it that it's just ridiculous, and they have to like rethink their strategy or their console or the way that they actually make things and implement different games and peripherals and stuff like that. But it does bring up the point that, like in this trailer, he said that you would have to get separate Joy-Con to play a game like that, but he didn't say the reason for getting separate Joy-Con is that you can pair it to the Switch Lite. He didn't actually say that, so I think down the line there will be a little bit of confusion, as there always is when Nintendo starts doing multiple systems, or same for, I guess, any system. It's like, for the Xbox One, it's like, what do you mean HDR? What is HDR? And that's not in the regular Xbox One. Like, what's the S? What's the difference between Xbox One S? Like the PS4 Pro, what does that do? Like 4K? Is my TV 4K? I don't know. It's one of those old ones that, it has like the little wire with like the little thing stick, and you plug it in. And so, there's been confusion before. There will always be confusion, but I don't think Nintendo is, until we get the product and actually see what the box says and see if there's any warning, see if there's any things like that or anything written out, and until we start seeing new games past September to see if it's actually printed on the back, works with Nintendo Switch Lite, or works in single player for Nintendo Switch Lite, or works with 2 players for Nintendo Switch Lite, but you need systems sold separately. Like, we don't know if this thing is still going to be able to just easily play 2-player on it with a separate pair of Joy-Cons that pair to the Nintendo Switch Lite, and then you just play 2 players on this mini system that doesn't have a kickstand. Because in that case, you would have one kid holding the thing and playing it, and then the other person has the Joy-Cons, and they're kind of looking over their shoulder trying to play it. So, and I don't see any reason why it can't do that, but it's kind of one of those things that until we actually get it, until it actually comes out, these are the things that people will be talking about. There will be articles coming out, there will be new videos coming out, and there will be all this information swirling, and then it turns into misinformation and misleading people, and people don't know what is actually what, and people say, I heard this, and then the next person says, I didn't hear that, that's not true, this isn't what it does, this is exactly what it does. And it just goes back and forth and just creates more confusion. So that's basically like the biggest problem I see with this thing. Now, when it comes to the battery, we're going to talk about the battery. I honestly think that the battery is just going to end up being the same one that's in the Switch now. I think it's not going to be any bigger. I think the way that they worded it, they're saying the regular Switch goes from 2.5 to 6.5 hours, which my Switch doesn't do that. It's about 2 hours, sometimes less than that. If I'm playing maybe Breath of the Wild with the volume down and the brightness down, I can maybe stretch 3 hours. But when I was playing like Final Fantasy 12 with the brightness down and the volume down, I would check it and I would be at 80% after playing it for maybe like 12 minutes. And then it seemed like maybe another 10 minutes I would check it and it would be at 50%. And then within the next half hour, it was down to like 12%. And the actual thing comes up on the screen flashing, and then I would just play it until it died. And it seemed to go really quick. Not all games do that. It depends the game. But there's no real benchmark, and it seems different for different people. Some people, they always have it in the dock, and then when they play it portable, they only do so for 10 minutes, or they leave it sitting out, and it's always dying. And it's the same for a cell phone. Some people leave theirs charged most of the day, or it's shut off and it's charging and it's plugged in for hours and hours, and at some point the battery becomes uncalibrated, which if you don't really know, that actually is a thing. And sometimes your batteries and your electronics can get screwed up to the point where you have to charge it fully, drain it 100% of the way until it dies, plug it back in, charge it until it's done charging. You kind of have to be keeping an eye on it, unplug it, use all its battery life back to zero. I actually had an old iPod that did that. And the thing was just plugged in so often that the battery was like dead. And after like 10 different times of charging it up to 100% and then just putting it on shuffle and putting it like in a drawer and letting it run out and die, it actually started to work the way it should, instead of it saying that it's at like 100% and then you unplug it. And by the time you put headphones in and turn it on and play like 2 songs, it would be back at a third blinking. So people have issues with their batteries. Mine seems fine. I pretty much pull it out of the dock and then I'll play it portable and drain it down to zero. I don't really have any problems with my battery, but the main point is that I only really get 2 hours of battery. So it's a little bit strange that they said the regular Switch battery is 2.5 hours to 6.5 hours, and they're saying that the Switch Lite is going to be from 3 hours to 7 hours. So that's about a half hour extra that they've actually put in the specification under the battery. So that's as far as what they're saying, and I'm guessing they're only saying that, and I would guess that it would be the same exact battery just because you have a slightly smaller screen. We don't know if it's going to be as bright as the original Switch. We don't know if it's going to be less bright. It might be the exact same. It might be slightly different, where if you actually put them side by side with the same game running, you can actually tell a difference. I just get the feeling that it's the same exact battery, which would be kind of a shame because you're taking out the reason that this thing is a Switch. And people are saying, it's funny, people are saying that it's called a Switch because of the different types of games on it. Like, people think that that's actually a thing, that they called it the Nintendo Switch because there's Splatoon, and then there's Mario, and then there's big RPGs, and then there's Breath of the Wild, and then there's online games, and there's Fortnite, and there's fighting and racing. And it's like, no, it's Switch. You switch your playstyle. You switch it from the dock to handheld. So anyways, they've taken out the complete TV dock aspect of it, and it's a handheld only. So if you ask me, I think they should have put a better battery in, and I'll be curious to see if it's the same exact battery, because if it comes out and that's the case, which I highly think that is exactly the case, that it's the same exact battery, I think a lot of people are going to be having their torches lit, because if it's just portable, this thing should be able to last 6 hours like they actually state. And it all depends the game you're playing, and no one has actual set benchmarks, and you kind of can't just benchmark blatantly like that. That's why it's always an approximation. But saying it has from 3 hours to 7 hours, depending on what you're playing, where you're playing, if you're actually connected to the internet, if your brightness is up, if your sound is up, if you're using headphones. Like, that's just not good enough to get like a real calculation. So I just find that a little bit odd. And what do you guys think? It's definitely a big deal that they've just taken it and cut the portability. See, I thought it was definitely going to be a Switch Mini. Now it makes sense because it's a Switch Lite. So the Lite takes functions out, makes it lighter accordingly to the word light. It's kind of like Bud Light. You're taking out calories. So I'm curious to see exactly how this is all going to play out and what the battery will be, because I really think that this thing should have had like a massive upgrade in battery. Now, like I was just saying a second ago, I would have thought if it was a Switch Mini that you would be able to buy a dock separately. I thought you would still be able to dock it, and it just didn't come with a dock, so that's a cost-saving measure. And then if you want a dock, you would get it later. But obviously it's not a Switch Mini, which makes sense. So instead of calling it Mini, they went with the Lite. So now with this, is it going to be a Pro? Is that going to be in 2 or 3 years? And really, info's just coming out about it, and it kind of got mixed in with this Switch Lite, Switch Mini, and people thought that we were going to be getting both soon. Because personally, from the start, I thought we would probably get a Switch Mini, and that started ramping up, and then it's like, no, we're getting a Switch Pro. And this was probably about 6, 7, 8 months ago that a lot of different things started coming out, and people were like, no, we're getting a Switch Mini. And then it was 50-50 depending who you talk to. It was, no, we're getting a Switch Pro. Like, sources say it's going to be more powerful. Like, they've actually played it. They've actually seen it come off of the factory line and stuff like that. And then things came out about that, and it was eventually said that, no, there's 2 things coming out from Nintendo. And even from then, my stance was that if the Nintendo Switch Mini came out, then that would kind of just be it. I didn't think that there was going to be a Pro. If there was going to be a Pro, my only qualm about that was that, what is the point? I mean, if you're going to supercharge the battery and make the screen a little bit nicer looking, or it's brighter, or it's 1080p, then that's not a much more powerful Switch. That's just kind of incremental improvements that normally happen to any type of system or car or anything with multiple different parts that come together to create like a system of some sort. And that just comes along with R&D and testing it out and actually using the thing and seeing it on the market, and then improving it and making it just work better, have a longer life, get the cost down, make it faster to build, make it cheaper or more expensive, and make more profit. That's the business side of it. So I never thought that a Switch Pro that was going to be like 4K with like an 8-hour battery, and it's going to have this super dock, or it's going to be just like basically your regular Switch now, but that's going to have a 1080 or 4K screen, and then you're going to put it into the super dock, or it's just going to be a regular 1080p, which is still good. It's still an upgrade with like an 8-hour battery, and then the dock would be kind of this under the TV console system dock that you then put the Switch into, that upscales to 4K and all that. I just don't see that happening. I mean, how long did it take for Nintendo to get HD? We still don't even have like basic text or voice chat. So a more powerful Switch that is capable of competing with a PS4 and the next box. I'm not going to call it the Xbox One 2. That's, people keep calling it the Xbox One 2, and it's just silly. But yeah, I didn't ever think that they were going to be coming out with a Pro, and I still don't. I think that's going to be in 3 years from now when it's the next generation. So as far as the colors go, you got the gray, you got the gold Pikachu. It's Pikachu colored, and then you got the turquoise and you got the gray, and those all look pretty cool. The Pokemon one, that one looks all right. It's, at first when I saw it, it kind of looked like this spreadsheet, like see-through. I couldn't really tell what color it was. You could just see the buttons, and I thought it was kind of unfinished. So that kind of has this weird off-white, like egg white, almost kind of bluish, almost like transparent, but it's not. It's weird color, and the sticks and stuff look cool, but I don't know. That one's not really for me. I guess the inscription, like, that's kind of on the back. That looks kind of cool, but I don't know. I guess I would just probably get the gray or maybe the turquoise. And I guess we'll have to see just when this thing comes out what it actually does, how well it holds up, which is going to take time, and if the joysticks drift. So aside from that, I think the battery's the same size, is going to last the same amount, and those are my thoughts on it. So you guys will have to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit the like button. I'm D-Dub, and I will see you guys later. Peace out, man.